Welcome once again to the weekly Mac Forum video chat. I got started about a minute or so early, I think, tonight, but that's okay. We'll take just a second and welcome everyone. It's our first show of 2017, January 1, 2017. Welcome aboard. Excuse me for not having some celebratory background music and sounds here, New Year party type sounds. That got pushed out of the way in show prep today. So first of all, let's start out as usual. I want to first of all wish everybody a happy holiday. I hope you enjoyed the Christmas season, and those of you that aren't celebrating Christmas, I hope the New Year brings you everything that you were hoping that would happen that's good for you. We want to welcome our newest member. It looks like it's 82 Blue Vet. So my guess would be that involves something of a Corvette nature. But hey, that's just a guess on my part. And once again, welcome to them and to all of our new members. Let's get right around into it. For today, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on our forum roundup, one or two quick tips, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something that I've been working on this weekend, or this week rather, this past week here at home, and I've learned a few things that might be beneficial to you. We're going to be talking about some of the things that you need to consider when you are looking at some of the streaming options that are available now. So let's get right on into things. First of all, one of the threads that I tagged for today has to do with clean installing from the recovery mode. This is an ongoing thread right now. We've had a couple of these in recent weeks. And you need to remember a couple of things about the clean install, whether you're doing it from a recovery mode, from a disk, whatever. Read those dialogues carefully. In Snow Leopard, in 10.6 and before, there was an option, in addition to a clean install, there was an option called Archive and Install that would do a fresh installation of the operating system, but did not erase your data. Now, in the most recent incarnations of the operating system, that archive install option is not there. If something asks you if you want to do a clean install, make sure that you have a backup of your data. First of all, anytime you're contemplating a reinstallation of the operating system, make sure you have a backup of your data. But anytime you get asked if you want to do a clean install, when a piece of software asks you that question, generally what that means, almost without exception, off the top of my head, I cannot think of an exception. I've been thinking about this since earlier today. When it says clean install, what's going to happen is it's going to erase the disk that you're going to put the operating system on. And that means completely erase it. That means the operating system is gone, the data is gone, anything that you have on that drive is gone. Now, can you recover it? Maybe. Let me put it this way. When data is erased from a drive, whether it be a thumb drive or anything like that, if you just do a basic erase, what's going to actually be erased are the pointers to the drive, to the data. In other words, the catalog that tells the computer where all that data is and where to find different things is going to get erased. Now, what happens is that as you add new data, that data is going to be put into spaces that were previously inhabited by the data that you just erased. So the more stuff you add, the less likely it becomes that you can recover your data. So you can see why if you accidentally delete your operating system and then you go back and you do a reinstall over that same drive, you have significantly reduced the chance that you're going to get back anything important of any significance. There is some third-party software out there that can attempt to recover it with varying degrees of success. And if it's really important to you, then of course there are drive recovery professionals that exist out there in the computer world. But you're going to pay them a significant amount of your hard-earned cash to do that service. And how much they can recover depends on what has been done to the drive. So your best bet is to have a good backup and make sure that you understand what those dialogues mean. All right, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the forum, but I'm going to skip right now because I want to spend a little bit of time on just a couple of tips, and then we'll move on to our discussion of streaming. First of all, if you're a fan of the Apple Watch, my buddy Kirk McLaren has up on his website, on his Kirkville site, a description of why he's decided to give the Apple Watch a rest. Now, I don't own an Apple Watch at this point, but from everything I've read, people either love them or hate them, and I think which group you fall into depends upon what you use the watch for, how you use the Apple Watch. Now, Kirk started with the original Apple Watch and then moved on to the second generation. And he admits that the second generation, the succeeding generations of Apple Watches, have been an improvement, but for the way he uses a watch, it's not as beneficial as he would like it to be, so he's going to put it away for a while and see what happens as the software gets improved. One of the things that he is encountering, and he's not the first person that I've seen that's encountered this, is if you're using the watch to count steps, and you've also used some of the other fitness tracker devices such as Fitbit, your estimates on the Apple Watch may be significantly different from what you get on a Fitbit or a similar device, and the accuracy is in part dependent upon how they measure, where exactly they're worn, and that kind of thing. And I know you guys know that as after the keynote this past summer, I mentioned that Apple had been working on a project to make the watch more accurate for people who use wheelchairs. I'm going to follow up on that and see what I can find out about it. That would be a big deal for me. It's one of the reasons I haven't gotten an Apple Watch. Their step counter in its original incarnation would not be very accurate for me because of the wheelchair use. So for some people it's going to be great. Kirk's got a fairly balanced review of why it is that he's going to put his aside. I'm going to link to that for you so that you can read it in full. And then also another one from Kirk, and this is from his Hey Apple, Fix This column. And as you know, these columns periodically appear in Macworld. This one was from December 23rd, so just before Christmas. And the thing that Kirk wants you to fix, or wants Apple to fix rather, is the App Store purchase list. Now, if you're making that list more user-friendly, now if you have used the App Store, you know that the purchase list keeps track of what devices, what software you have downloaded, and it allows you to go back in and re-download something. Now, even though Apple has this feature, I recommend that you keep a backup of the software that you've downloaded, and I'll tell you why. I've encountered this on iTunes. iTunes has a similar service that lets you re-download music that you have previously purchased. But there are times when a piece of music that you have purchased is no longer available in the App Store because for a variety of reasons. Usually because of some issues with licensing with the publisher. And a similar thing can happen with the App Store. Sometimes you may go back and try to get a piece of software that you had some time ago, and it's no longer there because the program has been pulled either by Apple or by the developer. So you want to make a backup. But the other thing that Kirk mentioned, and I had not really thought about this. I guess I'd known it, but not really paid too much attention to it. One of the things that I think is safe to say he finds a little annoying is the fact that the purchases, when you look at your purchase list, the purchases are not listed in alphabetical order or in some other way that would be easy to scroll through and find what you're looking for. They're kind of in reverse chronological order. So you're stuck kind of scrolling through the list and trying to locate, okay, when did I buy that piece of software? Was that in 2016? Was that before then? Yes, you can kind of search through it, but the problem is that depends on you remembering all or part of the application name. So he's got some interesting ideas for what he'd like to see fixed. I'll include a link to that in the articles, in the show notes. And also, for this one, I'm going to jump right in now to, as an intro to our discussion of streaming, I have up on the screen now a thread that I started with some questions about the search function in Apple TV 4. I was looking for a good excuse to get the Apple TV 4 because we're kind of moving into the streaming revolution, and my excuse would have been if the search function did a couple of things that my wife really likes that the Apple TV 3 doesn't do. Well, long story short, it doesn't quite do things exactly the way that she would like for them to work. So, boo, hiss, I don't get an Apple TV 4 right now. Unless the 3 blows up sometime soon. But it started us to thinking about streaming content and some of the streaming players that are available. And here's what started this. We started looking, our cable company changed a number of channels recently, added some, moved some around, that kind of thing. And we were taking a look at the listings one night and realized that there was one entire tier of channels where we were looking at maybe 3 of the channels in that tier. And the other area was, and we started looking and saying, okay, if we could cut that tier of channels out and cut out 1 or 2 other things that we were paying for but really hadn't watched consistently and wouldn't miss if we cut them, if we could cut those out, it might save us a significant amount of money. So we started looking at it. Well, the first hurdle was, could we keep a network called Turner Classic Movies, which is predominantly old movies. We've become big fans of that network. But to keep it, we would have to keep a bunch of other channels that we don't watch and don't generally spend a lot of time with. So we decided, okay, bye-bye TCM. And along the way, we started looking at, is it possible for us to stream some of the content that we would like to see, and maybe get some programs that are a little more in line with what we were watching and what we were interested in. So I started looking into it. And what I'm about to tell you about this, or to suggest to you, are just some very general things to get you thinking about some of the decisions that you need to make when it comes to streaming. And I'll put a description of this in the show notes, of course, although that may not go up until tomorrow. First of all, let's talk about a couple of things. When you start looking at, do I want to stream content? One of the very early questions to ask yourself is, what do I want to accomplish? In other words, do I want to just stream the occasional YouTube video or something of that nature, or that kind of thing, or do I want to go all the way and cut the cable from my cable or satellite provider? Okay, in other words, go entirely to streaming content. That's going to first of all depend on so answering that question, what you would like to do, is going to have a lot to do with the rest of the discussion. Because the next question you're going to need to answer revolve around two things. First of all, is your current internet connection fast enough for you to stream content without a lot of buffering? I encourage you to try it. Try something like a YouTube video that's 20 or 30 minutes long, and there are some out there. Try some piece of online content that's about 20 minutes long. See if you get a lot of buffering. Okay? And then the next question that kind of goes along with that is, how many people in your home will be connected and trying to stream things at the same time? Because that may dictate how much buffering you see. Try it under the kinds of conditions where you would normally be watching things. So if you're watching one thing and the spouse is watching something else and the kids are watching a third thing and you're all streaming, that may put a lot of stress on your network. And it may cause more buffering than you're willing to deal with. And the reason I suggest that you try that first is, one of your next questions, now that you've decided about how much streaming you would like to be able to do, and you've gotten a look at what your network, what your internet connection can handle, the next question to start asking yourself is, what if your network is too slow? Then you're going to have to talk to your internet provider. They may have a package that gives you more speed. The other thing that you're going to have to look at, and I encourage you to talk to your provider, ask a lot of questions, see what they can do for you, because the other thing is, the more streaming that you do, the more likely it is that you will hit a bandwidth limit if your provider has such a thing in place. Now, some providers, when you reach a certain amount of bandwidth a month, they start cutting back on your download speed. Literally, your speed slows to a crawl. Some providers charge you extra for additional data, that kind of thing. You're going to want to find that out. And that's why I said that one of your first questions need to be, how much would you like to be able to stream? In other words, would you like to get a package that just has internet and doesn't have any of the broadcast television setup? Maybe. Some people do, some people don't. Some people want the broadcast networks. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered there. This is just to get you thinking a little bit. And let's assume for a moment that you want to cut significantly the number of channels that you're receiving, TV channels you're receiving. The next question becomes, where do I get that content from? What kind of content am I looking for? Now it's time to start taking a serious look at, what are you watching right now? And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, you're entitled to watch whatever you want to watch. But your viewing habits are going to determine to some extent where you need to look for the content that you need. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in just a second. The next thing you've done now, you've got an idea of what your bandwidth is going to cost you, depending on the various packages that your provider has. You've got an idea whether your existing network can handle it. One of the other things that you're going to want to ask yourself is, what kind of device am I going to use to handle this streaming? Now, several years ago, I looked at doing some streaming because through a couple of apps that were built into our television. All I was trying to do is stream our iTunes library from our router in one room to the TV in the other, and I could never get it working. It was an enormous pain in the butt, if you'll excuse the expression. What has happened in recent years, last year or two, with the advent of streaming services like Hulu, Netflix, Slingbox, and the like, Sling TV, many TVs have these streaming applications for some of the more popular services built into them, into the TV itself. That may be the way you want to go. That may be your choice for easiest way to stream it. If the television manufacturer did their homework right, they may have a setup that's really easy to use. If you've purchased a television in the last 2 years or so, take a look at your manual and see if any of these services, Hulu, Netflix, Slingbox, or Sling TV rather, which is what it's actually called, are built in. And there probably are some others such as YouTube, etc. That may be the way you want to go. If you decide that that does not get you everything that you want in terms of capability, there are other devices that can be used for streaming. Roku has a number of devices. Amazon has. Of course, the Apple TV can do it. CNET recently did an overview of some of these players, and I'll have a link. As you can see, I've got one of their pages up on the screen here. This will help you to get an idea of which player might be good for you if your TV doesn't come with the things you want built in. Now, here's the one thing you need to keep in mind about these things. Not all of these things work seamlessly with iTunes. So if you've got a lot of content in your iTunes library and you want to seamlessly stream it over to your TV set, one of the things you're going to want to look at is, does it support iTunes easily? That's part of the reason we have an Apple TV. When I first started looking at this a while ago, not all of these devices supported iTunes format. So that's something else to take into consideration. And I'll put the link up to this site. And it has, as I say, it has some of the reviews. This is not all of the available devices. There are a ton of them. So once again, be prepared to ask a lot of questions. Take it 1 or 2 steps at a time. All right, and then you've got an idea maybe of what devices you would like to use. Your next thing is the various streaming services. As you can see, I've got Hulu up on the screen here, their main screen. They have a free trial, okay? So you can try it out. With the plans, you've got a couple of different options. This is why I ask you what your viewing habits are, because most of these streaming services have differing options. For example, one of the things here in Hulu is for their base price of $7.99 a month, I still have to put up with commercials. Okay, if I go up to the $11.98, $11.99 a month, it's no commercials. That's one of the things to consider. Other things like, for example, you notice that Hulu has an add-on for Showtime. That wasn't a big deal to us. This can be watching TV on phones, tablets, game consoles, and PCs. Not all of these streaming services support all devices. So if you're interested in a device, in a streaming service, make sure that it supports the device you would like to use. So if you have an Apple TV, make sure that it has a way of streaming to the Apple TV. Amazon Prime is a good example. There isn't an Amazon Prime app for the Apple TV at the moment. If you're going to stream Amazon Prime to your TV, what you're going to have to do is put the Amazon player on your iPhone, your iPad, something of that nature, and bounce it over to the Apple TV by AirPlay. That's a workaround that works right now. It's kind of annoying, but that's okay. And I suspect that some of that is because Amazon has a competing streaming box to compete with the Apple TV. Notice here you've got two different prices, and then also one of the rules you want to know about: how many people can be streaming on how many devices can be streaming on your account at one time. Some of the streaming services, although you can have multiple devices attached to your account, they only stream content to one device at a time. So that's something else that you want to ask about, check into. Another one here, and I included this just to give you an idea of what's available. Netflix. Here's a different streaming service. And Netflix, one of the things when I look at, if you notice, they once again have multiple pricing tiers, anywhere from currently $8 a month roughly for basic, all the way up to basically $12 for premium. And look here at one of the differences. One is that you can watch, how many screens can you watch at the same time? In other words, how many devices can be streaming at the same time? On their basic $8 a month plan, it's 1. On their standard plan, it's 2. On their premium plan, it goes up to 4. So that's why I said you need to consider how many people are going to be streaming different things at the same time in your household. And keep in mind, Netflix, Hulu, and several of the other services have a situation where you get either the first week or the first month free. I strongly suggest trying these free services out, and that will give you an idea of what their content looks like, and also how much you're going to use them, how big a pain they are to use. And some of them are a little easier to use than others. One of the things that I like, for example, is Netflix, even if you're on a device like an iPhone, has user profiles. So if I am watching a show that my wife doesn't like, she doesn't have to see that show in the watch list. On Hulu, they have, in their Hulu Plus program, they have watch lists, which basically amount to user profiles. You can access those user profiles on the computer, but as of right now, I don't think they always appear on your other devices. So if you're streaming from say an Apple TV or from a TV with Hulu built into it. It may not show you those profiles. So all of these things are kind of getting, this gets a little hairy, as I say. Take your time, take it one step at a time. And I've also included here a little bit of info about Sling TV, just to give you another idea of another streaming service that's out there. There are others, though. There are a number of others. And if you do a little Googling, you'll find the differences in what they carry and what the costs are. Right now, we are trying both Hulu and Netflix. I had originally signed up for another streaming service called Filmstruck because the initial promos kind of led me to believe that we could get Turner Classic Movies that way. As it turns out, that's not quite true. So we've kind of dropped that one and decided we'll just have to learn to live without Turner Classic Movies. I'm going to put a link to all of this in the show notes, as well as a somewhat more coherent description of what I've been talking about. And this is going to change. New features are going to get added all the time. New content. Content will periodically hop from one service to another. So it's going to be interesting to see. I can tell you that we have cut back on the number of channels we're carrying through the cable company. We didn't cut cable entirely because there's not as many over-the-air broadcast options in our area as there are in some places. But we were able to cut down on the number of television channels we were carrying and bump our internet plan up to unlimited bandwidth so that we're still saving a little bit of money over what we were paying on cable. So I'll kind of start a thread on this specifically devoted to this and kind of post updates as I find out, new information. Maybe some of you can suggest some other services that you like to check out, that you'd like for our members to be aware of. Now that we've got the basics of it up and running, I'm finding that I'm enjoying doing things this way because I can go in and build up a profile of things that I want to see, and I don't have to, be frustrated by the fact that one of the History channels decides to carry 12 hours of Ancient Aliens. Okay? Now, I will tell you this. If you are interested in current TV shows, i.e. the current season of a TV show, then you're probably going to want to either keep at least a very basic cable TV package or satellite TV, whichever you're using, or that's an area where Hulu has an advantage over Netflix. Hulu generally will get the current episode of a series a day or so after that airs on television, on broadcast or cable television. Netflix a lot of times gets many of the same series, but may not get them for as much as a year later. And we found that of the two services, Netflix has a bit more in the way of movies that we were interested in. So you may end up trying several of them before you find a package or a collection of services that that meets your needs. And as I say, keep an eye on this because it's constantly changing. New services become available, pricing changes, the content on the services changes. This is still kind of almost like the wild, wild west, so to speak. All right, guys, I hope you found that a little bit helpful. As I say, I'll put a little bit more coherent set of notes up there in the show notes. Don't look for those notes before sometime tomorrow. I hope that you've enjoyed this information. I'm looking at using this kind of as the prototype for what we do going forward. I may, instead of doing the show the way we have been doing it, pick like one topic each week and go into that topic in a little bit of detail. We'll see how that goes. Let me know if you like that format. And that's going to just about do it for this week. I've probably given you all you can handle in 1/2 hour period. So what we'll do is I'll just tell you, it's been great to have you here for the first week of the new year. I hope that you will join us next week. I've enjoyed having you here with me. And until next week, this has been your host, Sylvester Rock, a.k.a. Sly Dude. I'll see you in the forum.